Yo, man, I'm gonna go on, and it's gonna be relatively short, man. Keith Thurman used to be one of my favorite fighters. In fact, he used to be one of boxing's in terms of the hardcore fans. Keith Thurman was that guy that was he was I don't know how to explain it, but he was very refreshing, right, in the sport of boxing. And eventually he ended up becoming the villain in the sport of boxing. But at one point, this young man was adored. I don't know if that's the correct word, but a lot of fans used to be, a lot of fans were big on Keith Thurman. And he was something that at one point in time was a new wave of boxers. Hopefully I'm going live, man. Yeah. Nevertheless, it almost seemed like I don't want to talk bad about Keith Thurman, but if we're gonna be fair and honest, it almost felt like he bet only on himself to get the Floyd Mayweather fight. That was basically his career because he did fight Danny Garcia, and that was somewhat of an entertaining fight. His biggest fight was against Sean Porter, and even his contemporaries like Sean Porter and many others, they were frustrated when Keith Thurman was holding the division hostage, right? He was getting injured, he got married, and his love, it almost seemed, and his passion and the fire in the belly, it was no longer there. And I was going through the archives and I was able to kind of juxtapose and edit some old school interviews of Keith Thurman. And if we just heard him then, he might have been 24 to 28 years old, and see how his career panned out. It saddens me to say, but he is one of boxing's biggest disappointments past the Floyd Mayweather era. I never thought that I would say that, but it's the truth. He's one of boxing's biggest disappointments past the Floyd Mayweather era. Before the Four Kings, in the sense of Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, Tank, Lomachenko, and Shakur, and all of these fighters, Teofimo, there was once upon a time, right? Keith Thurman, Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, Kell Brook. And most of all these fighters, these welterweights, they fought one another. Keith Thurman was almost the one that didn't fight all of them. He didn't give us the Spence fight. He did not give us the Bud Crawford fight. He didn't give us the Kell Brook fight. And Thurman knew all of these guys. He was a fan. He watched every single one of these fighters. And the only one that really fought all of those guys was Bud Crawford and Sean Porter. In fact, Sean Porter basically fought him more or less when they were all in their prime. And Bud caught the second half and essentially retired all of these fighters. But if you don't want to believe me, you can hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
He's yet to even fight a B-class fighter, you know. But it's great, man. We need young, fresh talent, and he might be a super fight someday. But just like how I've been taking my time, how long did it take for me to get the Robert Guerrero fight?
So just to give you guys a little bit of context, he's being interviewed by Ness and the Boxing Voice, and he's talking about Errol Spence and how Errol Spence is putting pressure on him within 15 or 16 fights. And basically he's saying Errol Spence is not a big enough name. He hadn't really fought B-list fighters, B-class fighters. And that's the context. So he's talking about Errol Spence here.
I asked for the Robert Guerrero fight 2 years before I got the Robert Guerrero fight. You can want what you want, but in the world of boxing, a lot of times you have to work for it, and you have to earn it. We're looking forward to him. The boxing experts are looking forward to him, but he is young. He does need to mature, and when he is mature, I will be looking forward to him.
And he never gave us that fight. And Keith Thurman and Errol Spence was calling for that fight, for that unification bout. And Keith Thurman, to this day, never gave us that fight. And he would try to rewrite history when Errol had all of the belts and he was looking to fight Bud Crawford. Keith Thurman tried to be his mandatory. Keith Thurman tried to rewrite history, right? But when he was in the position, when he was undefeated, when he was unified, when a lot of people, I wouldn't say had him on the pound for pound list, but when he had momentum and he had all the power and the influence in the welterweight division, Keith Thurman never gave us any of the fights post essentially Mayweather.
Does not truly belong in the welterweight division. And if he wants to make a true statement, he should fight a real welterweight. Somebody like Keith Thurman, somebody like Sean Porter, his fellow European fighter Kell Brooks, fought Sean Porter, a great welterweight. So I would just like to see Amir Khan do the same thing.
Here goes the same thing. Keith Thurman said the same thing about Amir Khan, which, and these very familiar words, he would say the same thing towards Terrence Bud Crawford, right? He would be like, oh man, Bud is new to the welterweight division. I'm looking forward to that fight, but he first needs to pick up a belt. He was saying all of these things. And to this day, Keith Thurman never fought Bud Crawford. Like I said, he is the biggest disappointment in the welterweight division post Floyd Mayweather retirement. All right. I'm going to skip a little forward.
I'm young. They used to fight each other every other week back in the day. I like my paychecks. I'll go ahead and take another paycheck. He's about to retire. I ain't retired anytime soon. I'm ready, man. Fight Earl Spence in the near future. That boy don't want it in the near future. His uncle Floyd, who adopted him, told him to state that statement. To fight a young man before you say my name in front of you before you're able to get a chance. Like, what really went through Keith Thurman's mind at the time of hearing those statements? Man, I don't really care, bro. At the end of the day, he's going to do the best to control his career, man. As soon as that man nicknamed himself Money, it's apparent what his interest is. Wants to fight the world. We are here in the world of boxing, and I'm trying to dominate. I'm not trying to, you know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to kill a man in the ring section. But I ask God that he allows that opponent to go through what I call 10 seconds of pain.
Just to give you guys a little recap, Keith Thurman here was saying, man, that he's got an O and he's not afraid to let it go. If you can beat me, beat me. Well, when Errol Spence eventually started gaining a lot of traction and momentum, you saw the fear in Keith Thurman's eyes. You saw it, man. In an interview, he talked about how he wasn't ready, how he was having surgery. He would need to get active because his body was breaking down and deteriorating on him. And Errol was putting a lot of pressure for them to unify against one another. Keith Thurman never gave us that shot. Never gave us that fight, man. He left so much like legacy fights. And he never gave us. He's the biggest disappointment in the sport of boxing. And the reason I bring up Keith Thurman and I want to talk to him, mention him and talk a little bit about him, man, is look where his career is at. The last 3 years, I think he's only fought maybe twice, maybe once a year. He's very inactive. The past 4 years, maybe 2 or 3 fights. And it's almost sad how it's turning out to be. Now, maybe he has this opportunity fighting Tim Tszyu. He can potentially beat him. I don't think it'll happen because everything in Keith Thurman's nature and his behavior and what he would talk about in the past, at least when it came down to fighting Errol Spence, he said that he needed to be active, he needed to be healthy, he needed to be sharp, he needed to take out the ring rust. All of that now is going against him against Tim Tszyu. He's moving up in weight. He's been very inactive, right? Now he's older. He's not old, but he's older. And he's fighting a prime undefeated champion in Tim Tszyu. To the point where it's the ultimate disrespect, and the WBO is not even sanctioning this bout or allowing Keith Thurman, if he were somehow to upset Tim Tszyu, he's not even going to become the champion that night. What's going on, Vince? Do you consider Thurman in his prime now, or is the best in the rear view? Honestly, man, I would say this. I don't think Keith Thurman was ever really had a prime moment. Like he never really had his prime, because in his prime, his biggest fights were Sean Porter and Danny Garcia, and you can be like, oh, well, that was the best Keith Thurman. That's the best version of Keith Thurman. But it really wasn't if you really look at it, because Keith Thurman was very dominant against Mario Barrios, right? Keith Thurman didn't look that great against Manny Pacquiao at all, right? Even against Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman did not look that great. The last 3 rounds, the championship rounds, he circled for 9 minutes, similar to how Oscar De La Hoya gave up those last 3 rounds, the championship rounds. You can almost say the most important ones, to Felix Trinidad. When Keith Thurman fought Sean Porter, you can almost say that Sean Porter won that fight. I think all judges, all 3 of them, had it 7-5. It was that close and competitive. So I guess, obviously, I would say Keith Thurman was better back then because, obviously, he had youth and he was undefeated and unified. But I don't really know where Keith Thurman really had his prime years, But obviously, you would say in the past because that's when he was most active. He was on a tear. But I guess the best version of Keith Thurman was when he was beating guys like Jesus Soto Caras, Diego Chavez, and maybe Robert the Ghost Guerrero. But yeah, it's definitely not now. Now, he could rewrite history and pull one of the biggest upsets in the modern time right now if he was able to upset Tim Tszyu, who will be fighting in Australia. Well, actually, I think this fight will be taking place in Las Vegas. But nevertheless, no one's giving Thurman a chance. He is moving up in weight. He's been very inactive. He hasn't looked good in his last couple of bouts. And now he's fighting a prime undefeated champion with a lot of activity, with a lot of momentum. And Tim Tszyu has leapfrogged ever since he got dropped by Terrell Guichet. Tim Tszyu has looked incredible. On the contrary to Keith Thurman, Thurman's looked horrible.
Because 10 seconds of pain is all you need for that referee to wave the fight off. And then he can stand back up, take his paycheck, and go home. I have been more of a boxer. Yeah, I didn't put out a knockout. But don't you remember them boys laying down on the mat, staring at a blue canvas? Come on now.
Man, Keith Thurman, I'm not going to lie, man. He was something special. It was refreshing, like I stated before. His interviews with Fight Hype. I remember he was talking about when he was pretty much getting big checks. He was talking about that, how he had to call Al Heyman to eat at a fancy restaurant where the dessert was like a helium balloon, and they would devour based on the temperature of your mouth, and how it was very exclusive restaurant and that he had only heard great things about it. I believe this restaurant was in Chicago. One of the things that was so tantalizing and refreshing about Keith Thurman is that he was very accessible to the fans. He was very engaging, and he gave you a lot of access, right? And he was very articulate, and everything that he stated was very witty. You almost would want to say that you believed him. He was an honest person. I don't know what exactly went wrong in his career, but again, I'm going to say this. He's one of the biggest disappointments in the welterweight division. Because, see, a lot of people might think that would be Errol Spence, but not really. Errol Spence had a career. He had a path. He said he was going to take care of his side of the street and then get to Bud Crawford last. He was a man of his word. I can't say the same to Keith Thurman because Keith Thurman hit us with the biggest switcheroo, right? Kind of like when Shakur and Tio and Ryan and Devin, the 135 division looked very promising when these guys were, I guess you can say, broke or in the up and coming. Kind of like Fernando Vargas's sons and Abdullah Mason. They have honest intentions. And then next thing you know, once they start getting that buzz, once they start feeling butts in those seats, they hit us with this big old, oh, I'm a businessman. Rather than, oh, I'm a legacy fighter. Anyway, so I can't believe Keith Thurman anymore what he said because he never honored his words. He never came through with his actions. Where Errol, he did clear out the PBC side of the stable, right? And then he would get to Bud Crawford, and he stood on that. Unfortunately, Bud Crawford destroyed him, but nevertheless, A, B, C, and D it went according to plan, more or less. Obviously, the car wreck and all these things were not part of the plan. Those were just things that were roadblocks that hindered the success of Errol, self-inflicted wounds, whatever the case may be. But he stuck to it, and Bud Crawford snatched all the glory from him.
Who else is doing what I'm doing, man? Out of 26 fights, you know what I'm saying? There was a 1-no contest. I was about to knock that boy out, right? That didn't touch the. I want. You see, who wants to fight everybody? But we can only fight one dude at a time, man. So we can go ahead and print out the wish list. But I'm gonna do my best to entertain you guys until the day I retire. Man, look at you in your camera, right?
He never entertained us, man. It's sad. Only 2, maybe 3, 4 times, man.
You love this talk. People on YouTube that watch your channel love this talk. They love boxing talk. You know what I'm saying? I love the fight. You know what I'm saying? We can talk all we want, man. But I heard how Baco will take my victory, my W, and keep it moving. Everything is talk, And me, man, I already said, man, I'm not afraid to lose, man. I don't know how many times I lost to the amateurs, man, but it was probably close to there, man. My goal was to be, man, which is a 7-figure fighter. The dreams have come true. I have lived the American dream where I have struggled. I was raised in a single-parent household. You know what I'm saying? I was lucky to get 1 pair of shoes, within a year. If I got 2 pairs, I was really happy. I never asked my mother for much. I didn't want to go into her pockets. I didn't want to ask her for everything. I remember when I was 14, 15 years old, I went and cut lawns so that I could make $200 so I could buy myself my own fresh outfit from head to toe.
Like I said, everything that he stated early in his career, it was very relatable, right? His ego wasn't inflated. It was, Keith Thurman was that guy. He was supposed to be that guy for the welterweight division. I don't know if it was when he got married. I don't know whether he was afraid to lose everything that he worked so hard for. Because obviously, like he stated, it took me 2 years to get the Robert Guerrero fight when I wanted it way back then. He states that, man, what could have been? What could have been? It's almost a sense of desperation. And then you see Keith Thurman now and the way he's moving and the way his career has panned out. These are empty words. Like he said, it's just talk. He's the biggest disappointment in boxing in the welterweight division. Sad to say. Now, of course, you can be like, oh, man, he's successful. He's a millionaire living good. Man, when he feels that body shots and those punishments that Tim Tszyu, he's gonna go back into hiding. Vince goes, yeah, it's been a while since he shined. Man, and when he did shine, he looked great. Like you felt great when Keith Thurman was winning. And then all of a sudden, man, he just lost it on. Vince goes, I always thought of him as a tough guy because of his looks. Yeah, bro, he reminded me of, I think it was Crazy Bone or Busy Bone from, Bone Thugs, bro. Like, man, he looked legit, dog, but, it was really frustrating. It sucks, man. It sucks when, and I have this same sentiment towards a guy from East Los Angeles. His name was Frankie Gomez. Frankie Gomez was a beast. One of my favorite fighters, up and coming. He fought a lot similar to Keith Thurman, that he can bang on the inside and he can circle and box on the outside, right? For those that remember Frankie Gomez, he had good amateur experience. He was signed with Golden Boy. He fought Jose Benavidez Jr. Frankie Gomez was that dude. And then when he beat Mauricio Herrera, convincingly, one of the only fighters to ever do so besides Virgil Ortiz when he knocked him out, Frankie Gomez just retires. He loses the passion in boxing, and he was never to be heard. And I'm not saying this sport isn't hard, right? In this sport, maybe you have 3 legit good years. And then, you start being a little slow, that twitch, that reflex, the drive, the passion to do something great, it kind of fades. And then you start being manipulated and being pulled this way and the other way. And, you kind of feel like a little mannequin at times. It's like, I want to manage being a legacy and solidifying my legacy and my reign as a champion. But then at the same time, man, this road is not feeding my family. And I felt like Keith Thurman wasn't able to juggle it correctly. And somewhere he got lost along the way. But I just want to bring you guys these memories because Keith Thurman at one time was that guy.
I I could spend a little bit of money on myself, but I would never ask my mother for a $200 outfit. I went out there and I earned it myself. And now here I am doing the sport that I love. This is not a sport that I can do forever. I'm not going to be here forever, but I'm going to be here for as long as I can. I'm going to be busting people up with these hands for as long as I can. One time. All the time. Boxing, go in your thing. You better not duck me, son. You know, I'm Keith one-time Thurman. You better not duck me, son. If you throw back Keith one-time Thurman. You better not duck me, son.
Shit, let's go, man. Look, I know that Tim Sue is probably going to body Keith Thurman, but I'm gonna be rooting for Keith Thurman. As long he just brings good memories. When I was this thing might have been like 6 or 8 years ago. I might have been 20 years old, fellas. Or I was 20 years old. I was boxing. I had my cornrows. Man. Shit. Come on, Keith. Bring it home, dog.
Few throwback fighters like yourself that don't care about the zero record and just giving the fans a great fight. Because they don't have the heart that I have. They don't have the upbringing that I have. And they just don't have the spirit that I have, coming where I come from. So I don't care about the record, man. The record doesn't scare me. Plus, I'm a true champion. You know? So no matter what you bring to the table, I'm going to always give my best. I'm always going to go out there and try to dominate in that ring. And if I fall short, I already said it on one interview before, whoever beats Keith Thurman is a bad man.
That's true. That's one of the truthfulest statements that he said, because Manny Pacquiao ended up beating him. And we know Manny Pacquiao is a bad man. So let's keep going, man. Let's go down memory lane.
Last thing, I'm going to throw 10 names at you from the world of boxing. Tell me the first thing that comes to mind to Keith Thurman. Amir Khan. Soft. Marcos Maidana. Rugged. Floyd Mayweather. I call him a ballerina. Manny Pacquiao. Warrior. Keith Thurman. Beast.
Yeah, man. Let's go.
How long you gonna duck me, son? What do I gotta do to get your approval to step in the ring? Okay, I understand. No, I asked you a question and you answered it. I appreciate that. Okay.
Give me a second, guys. Give me a second.
Okay. You just need more money. Okay. Son, you age and I come at you. You better not duck me, son. You better not duck me, son. I'm telling you. Hey, that's what we're doing, baby. That's what we're doing. This is the third appearance, baby. You know the game. And I'm coming for you. I am coming for you. Tell you, when we get that money up and we come at you, baby, I'm just saying, don't duck me. When the money's there, exactly. But
Man, who remembers this Keith Thurman, man?
you still got 4 losses, son. You still got 4 losses. You know what I'm saying? I would take Cotto out. Okay?
Woo! He said he would take Miguel Cotto out. Man, Keith Thurman was that dude. Man, a young Keith Thurman was that guy. Every single one of us has been through that Keith Thurman phase, that very rebellious phase where we're going to conquer the world. And then once we hit that age group, I don't know, sometimes it can be late 30s, mid 30s, but you lose that rebellious, youthful spirit. And, you get like, not controlled, but tamed, right? Where you're young and ambitious and you have these big dreams. And that was Thurman, bro. Oh, man. And what was the craziest thing is Keith Thurman, like I said, going back to that charisma, he was very articulate. And when you follow the story of Keith Thurman, bro, and sometimes it doesn't pan out your way that you wanted it, man. But yeah, and it saddens me to say that he is one of boxing's biggest disappointments. But I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. Like past Marquez and Pacquiao, I'll still say Keith Thurman is one of my favorite fighters.
Take Cotto out. I'll put you to sleep, son. Bust that whole face up, son. Like all the bums you put to sleep. I know. I don't take fights. I don't reach know this. I don't fight a 40-year-old man. When you fight a world championship, like you do, so fire. We had a flood of, he would say, it's also a three-time national champion, and you better keep your hands up. Done it after the Mayweather sweepstakes. He's Willy Wonka, and everybody wants a gold ticket.
Truly Trey, man. Welcome in, bro. It's been a while. Thurman was supposed to be the guy. Man, he had it all. The mic skills, the ring presence, great personality, exciting fights. Oh, man, what could have been? I couldn't have said it better myself, man. I agree. I'll be rooting for him against Tim soon. And it's not nothing. I mean, I know that in the previous video, like a month or so, I was just mostly disappointed that this Keith Thurman, in fact, I'm just going to say something. Every single PBC fighter that left Golden Boy, right? There is a charm and there is a beauty being promoted by Golden Boy, right? Gold medalist, multi-divisional champion, 5 or 6-time champion, billionaire, one of the only ones that has had a successful reign as a promoter, right? Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar signed Keith Thurman, right? When he was an up-and-comer, maybe like less than 4 or 7 fights, he signed, even though Keith Thurman, when Oscar saw him fight live for the first time, he got dropped in the first round, right? This is not what I saw. This is what Keith Thurman stated. And he eventually ended up knocking the other dude out late. But every single fighter, even guys like Leo Santa Cruz, Deontay Wilder, Gary Russell Jr., all of these guys were signed to Golden Boy. The minute they left to PBC, every single one of those fighters essentially were their downfall, right? Had Leo Santa Cruz stayed, man, everybody just like, let's do this. Man, let me pick this up. This is my girl right here, guys. Hold on. But yeah, man, every single one of those PBC fighters that left Oscar De La Hoya, right? And maybe you can exclude Jermell Charlo because he ended up becoming undisputed. But aside from that, every single one of those fighters that Golden Boy had before PBC and Al Heyman and Richard Schaefer did whatever it is that did to the Golden Boy just because, Oscar parties too hard like Johnny Manziel, their careers went to shit. That's just the reality. Look at Jermall Charlo. Where is Gary Russell Jr.? Oscar gave us Loma and Gary Russell Jr. Like that was happened. I have the fight, right? I might post it. I think I have the highlights on the page. It was a Golden Boy promoted event. Deontay Wilder, look what he became, right? And the reason I say all this was after the fact they left Oscar De La Hoya is it's kind of like being trained by Freddie Roach. Look at every single fighter that had trained with Freddie Roach or left Freddie Roach. Jose Ramirez was trained by Freddie Roach. When he left and he went to Robert Garcia, never the same. Because when you see Freddie give you instructions and he's shaking because of his Parkinson's and his battle, knowing that you're going on a battle yourself, that's the commander-in-chief that you want. Because you can still hear him and he's giving you instructions, and when he's hitting mitts and bouncing with you in the ring, you're like, that's a fucking legend. So when you're being promoted by one of the greatest pioneers that boxing has had in Oscar De La Hoya for the last 30 years, since he turned pro, since he ever existed in the sphere of influence in terms of this sport of boxing, no one has dedicated more to himself in building stars, passing off the torch, and fighting everybody than Oscar De La Hoya. And we have clowns like Rolly Romero and clowns like Errol Spence that try to tarnish the reputation of Oscar De La Hoya. If you wish you can have a career as similar to the great Oscar De La Hoya, and none of these guys have come close. None of these guys, all right? Not in terms from a monetary standpoint. I ain't talking about that, okay? Maybe Canelo. You can kind of, he's done great for himself. Boxing Magic Mex side. Viva Canelo. Oscar had everyone at PBC, but some rat thief stole Oscar fighters. Yeah, man. Al Heyman alongside Richard Schaefer. But Richard Schaefer, he had that key man clause. He's the one that I mean, look what happened to Ringstar Promotions. Where is Richard Schaefer now? He had Regis Prograis. He had Nonito Donaire. His Ringstar promotional company, Probellum, it never even popped off. That's how you know the face. Oscar De La Hoya was not just the face. He was the whole damn shebang. He was everything for Golden Boy. Because if it was Richard Schaefer and he was so fucking smart, if it was Al Heyman, where they at right now? Damn near non-existent. Where's Oscar De La Hoya? With the limited roster that he has, he's still giving us the biggest fights. Last year, still gave us the biggest fights. Tank versus Ryan, right? This year, maybe Jaime Munguia versus Canelo. Oscar stole, he's fighting, bro. He's fighting. And you got to tip your hat off to him. Maybe I'm like sentimental and shit, but it is what it is, man. It's all good. Oscar is rebuilding and it's showing. Man, I know. And then you still got these disrespectful dudes like Jojo Diaz after he gets beat on Thursday night last week and he tries to slander Oscar De La Hoya. Look, I know emotions are high. You know what I'm saying? Like, and Jojo probably feels like, man, this is politics, But the reality, Jojo, is you haven't been good in these upper, mid-tier divisions. You got to go back down to 126 when you were actually somewhat good. And even then, you couldn't knock out guys like Manuel Tino Avila, right? Like, you didn't have that knockout power. You still a good fighter. You still got the skills. You still got grit. You still got chin. You got skills. But, like size matters. Anyway, Truly Trey goes, the concept of the PBC is great, but the execution was poor. Yeah, they didn't have a great phase. Nobody represented that company. Floyd Mayweather should have taken control of the company. He should have been the face, but he wanted to be in the shadows, do his own thing with Floyd Mayweather Promotions, give these backhanded compliments or go on these interviews and state, oh, well, when you're with Al Heyman, you're basically with me. Well, if that's the case, then be the face of PBC. Take it like you've always been in terms of, your money companies and be the face, be the pillar. But no, his ego wouldn't allow himself to take a back seat. Like he gives everybody a backhanded compliment, But the PBC at the first couple of years, they were great when they were trying to go on True TV, Bounce TV, Spike, Fox Sports 1, NBC Sports, Showtime, and all of these outlets. It was fantastic when they gave us Abner Mares and Leo Santa Cruz on Fox. When they gave us Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, Sean Porter on Fox, those were great things. When Errol Spence knocked out Leonard Bundu in between the Olympic time slots, right? 7.7 million people tuned in. I saw what PBC was doing. Right? But then you realize, is it sustainable? And they realized that they were losing a lot of money relatively quick, overpaying these fighters, which is the reason why these fighters left. And Canelo was the only one that stayed. And eventually the funds ran out, and then they resorted back to giving us nothing but pay-per-view fights and inactivity. When if they had a proper matchmaker, right, like a Robert Diaz or these other legends, and if they had a promotional phase, even if it was Tom Brown earlier on, right, or if it was Lou DiBello, didn't matter. You need a promoter. You need someone you need a salesman. You need a face of the brand. PBC didn't have that because Al Heyman he was never accessible. Nevertheless, where's PBC at now? Hopefully they do good things on Amazon, but at the same time, I kind of don't want them to do good things on Amazon because I want all those fighters to go on one network, one platform, and that'll be DAZN. And I'm not even a big fan of the DAZN platform. I don't like Chris Mannix. I'm not the biggest Eddie Hearn fan or whatever the case may be, but there is structure there, right? There is a cachet on DAZN. Would have been nice to have the American talent be on that network, but nevertheless, now they're fighting on Amazon, so whatever. Speed. The PBC is a little train that could, as incredulous, illogical their business moves may have seemed, they still find a way to exist and make it work. Like MacGyver with dental flaws and matches. Yeah, man, sure. Boxing Magic goes, I'm glad PBC is falling off. It's bad for boxing, period. But they blame Oscar, Bob, and Eddie in them. Yeah, man. But yeah, man, I just wanted to show you guys this video, this juxtaposed of montage footage of Keith Thurman. This guy was once that dude. And even though I don't really agree with his comment in terms of flat-footed Mexicans and how he's never lost, like I stated before, when Keith Thurman was flat-footed himself, one-time KOs were coming out. When he became this outboxer and circling around like Jermaine Ortiz and not sitting on his punches, he was getting hurt by body shots against non-punchers, or damn near every single fighter in there. Luis Collazo, Jesus Soto Caraz, Mario Barrios, all of these dudes were rocking and hurting Keith Thurman but when he sat down with a high guard, boom, he was giving Pacquiao that work. When he was boxing and moving, he got dropped with his hands down. So if Keith Thurman decides to run against Tim Tszyu, it's going to get knocked out. But if he stands there and lets his punches fly, digs to the body, and uses that flamboyant red, white, and blue American boxing skills, man, he's got a shot. It ain't going to be easy because Tim Tszyu looks to be that dude. And hopefully Jermell Charlo goes back down to 154 and fights Tim Tszyu because, man, I'm rooting for Jermell to come back, and he's got to hold down his throne. It's still his throne at 154. Sure, there's a new up-and-coming empires that are trying to take over what Jermell established and accomplished. But nevertheless, Jermell has to come out of the woodworks and show these dudes that he is still that dude at 154. Now, I don't know what's going on with Jermell. You know, he's been losing a lot of momentum ever since the Canelo beating, which is not even a beating. It's just like, hey, man, I was me trying to be great, came up short, you know, didn't want to lay down the line. Canelo got some good-ass skills, and I think he said that. But, yeah, Jermell's got to go down to 154. Chico Lucio, Kid Sueñito Thurman. Yeah, man. Yeah. A lo mejor Tim Tszyu lo va a dormir. But on that note, guys, that's just this topic. Man, I'll go live in a little bit. Maybe we'll talk about Keith Thurman and, Bud Crawford and Teofimo Lopez, Canelo. I'm not too sure, man, but I just wanted to show you this amazing montage clips of Keith Thurman, how he was the guy, man. He was the guy. And it didn't really work out for him. But it starts with Tim Tszyu in March. I believe that's when the fight takes place. If somehow Keith Thurman's got one more bag up his tricks and up his sleeve, a couple tricks up his sleeve. I think I said that adage wrong, but if he's got one more miraculously night, it'll be this one against Tim Tszyu. You know, Tim Tszyu is beatable, right? If Terrell Gausha can drop him, Keith Thurman could too. But where Tim Tszyu is now versus then when he fought Gausha, this is a complete fighter in Tim Tszyu. Truly, Trey goes, hand surgery killed it for that man. Yeah, I don't know if it was hand surgery, elbow surgery. I don't know if it was his Chevy, his Mustang Shelby that he spun in hydroplane in the freeway, and he had this existential crisis over it. I don't know if it was marriage where he got complacent and fat. I don't know what it was. All right, maybe it was all mix of those things, you know, all happening in subsequent order right after one another. That Keith Thurman lost a bunch of momentum, but nevertheless, man, he's got this fight against Tim Tszyu. He's got to treat it like his last fight. But if he's able to overcome, and, you know, if he's got an Andy Ruiz against Anthony Josh, you know, in the first fight, if Thurman's got one of those up his sleeve, then he just rejuvenated his career, and Bud Crawford will fight Keith Thurman at 154. Errol Spence will move up to 154 and command Keith Thurman, be like, look, bro, you were a little witch at 147, didn't want to fight real killers, but at 154, beating Tim Tszyu with that momentum, that's respectable. Keith Thurman has one night, 36 minutes if it goes the distance, to try to reshape his identity, right? And become what he wanted to do at 147. He's got that shot. Tim Tszyu, for some reason, obliged and is risking it all. So I got to salute to Tim Tszyu. I'm thinking it'll be a one-sided fight, but maybe Keith Thurman has other plans. But look, guys, on that note, I'm done for the night. Y'all have a good night. Maybe we'll come back later on, but salute to every guys for tuning in, man. Thank you guys for giving me, you know, your ear and some time and space just to, you know, shoot the shit and talk boxing. Warp Speed goes, Keith Thurman was one of my favorite fighters. To replace Miguel Cotto right there with Lomachenko. Loma stayed my favorite, though. Let's talk about the legend Butterbean, one-time punch. Yo, I remember playing, I think it was like Fight Night Round 2 for like the PlayStation 3. Butterbean was one of the fighters there. The dude was sweet. He was solid. Anyway, on that note, guys, have a good night. I'm out.